The body changes with age, and that's normal, but it's no reason to give up on pleasure. When we were young, we thought we knew everything, especially when it came to love and sex. We believed that the strength of passion belonged only to youth, and we couldn't imagine that in maturity this energy could remain, or even reveal itself in a new way. I thought the same way, until one day my grandmother told me something that changed my perspective on life and intimate relationships forever. Her name was Emma, and by the time she shared her secrets with me, she was already 85 years old. Despite her age, she was remarkably spry and full of wisdom that she had gathered over the years. That evening, we were sitting in the kitchen, and my grandmother, with a mysterious sparkle in her eye, began her story. "You know, dear," she began, "what they say about older men, that they lose interest in sex. It's complete nonsense. In my time, I dated several men over 60, and they were absolute animals in bed. In a good way, of course." And she laughed like a young girl, reminding me that passion knows no age. Of course, I was surprised. All my life we were taught that with age, people lose interest in intimacy, that it's a young person's thing. But my grandmother continued, "Oh, trust me, it's not about age. It's about how you perceive your body and desires. Men at 60 and even older can be just as passionate as in their youth. Moreover, with age, they not only gain experience but also an understanding of how to give pleasure. But for that, one thing is needed, a desire and willingness to understand one's changes." I asked my grandmother what she meant when she said these men were animals in bed. Her eyes sparkled and she began to tell. "When I was around 30, I dated a man named Victor. He was over 60, and our relationship was something I still remember with delight. Many around me couldn't understand why I was with him, but he was a man who knew his body and mine. He wasn't in a hurry, didn't try to show his strength through roughness or youthful bravado, as young men often do. No, he was attentive to details, knew how to create an atmosphere where I could relax and feel truly desired. And honestly, in bed, he was a real beast, but not in the sense of brute force, but in how he felt my every movement, how he knew exactly what I needed." She laughed, noticing my surprise. Older men, especially those who maintain their health and interest in life, can surprise you. They have wisdom and patience that young men often lack. And as for energy, don't doubt it. If they lead an active lifestyle, they can really surprise you. But here's the secret that many don't understand, my grandmother continued. Sexual energy in men after 60 doesn't disappear. It just transforms. And if a man knows how to take care of his body properly, age becomes not an obstacle but an advantage. She told me that many older men mistakenly believe that their sexual life should fade with age. This leads them either to lose interest or feel ashamed of their desires. However, as my grandmother claimed, that's not true. Yes, the body changes, but you can work with those changes if you approach them correctly. It all starts with accepting your age, she said. A man must understand that his body has changed, and that's not a bad thing. It opens up opportunities for new discoveries. Men over 60 should pay attention to their health, nutrition, stress levels, and, of course, physical activity. These factors directly affect their sexual life. My grandmother also told me how important it is to maintain physical health to support sexual activity in old age. You see, dear, regular sexual activity is not just a desire, it's a biological need. Sex supports circulation, strengthens the heart, and reduces stress. It's an amazing way to stay healthy. When I was younger, I didn't understand this. I thought sex was just physical pleasure. But now I see it's much more. Her words made me think. It turns out that sexual activity in old age is not only possible but beneficial to health. My grandmother explained that sexual life in mature age can even be more conscious and emotionally fulfilling than in youth. It's a time when people better understand their needs and desires, when the value of intimacy increases. But she also warned that sexual life in old age requires adaptation. The men I knew, she said, didn't try to reclaim their youth. They accepted their bodies as they were and used those changes to their advantage. They understood that for pleasure, it's no longer about reaching the same levels as in youth. It wasn't about being better, it was about being authentic. She emphasized that intimacy can be expressed not only through the sexual act. Prolonged touch, tender embraces, deep conversations, all become part of closeness, and this can bring just as much satisfaction. I also realized that what you eat and how you live directly affects your sexual life, she continued. My grandmother explained that the men she had relationships with always watched their diet and stayed physically active. She said that proper nutrition, rich in antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals, helps maintain sexual health. It's important to avoid foods high in sugar and saturated fats, which can negatively affect circulation and hormone balance. A man who wants to stay active in bed must understand that his sexual life is a continuation of his lifestyle. If you take care of yourself, your sexual energy will stay with you much longer, she said. When my grandmother finished her story, she told me, "It doesn't matter how old a man is. If he understands his body, takes care of it, and stays open to his desires, he can be a truly passionate partner." Men over 60 shouldn't be underestimated. They have strength, but it's more conscious, and that makes them not only good lovers but also better partners. Her words left a deep impression on me. I realized that sexual life doesn't end with age, but rather takes on new depth and power. Men over 60 can be just as passionate and active as they were in youth if they accept their bodies and are open to change. After my grandmother shared with me the physical aspects of relationships with older men, she moved on to something even more important: the emotional connection and support in such partnerships. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned over the years is that intimacy deepens and becomes more meaningful with age, she said, smiling. Young couples often focus only on physical pleasure, on sex as such. But the older we get, the more we realize that true intimacy is not just about the body. It's about the connection between souls, between hearts. My grandmother told me that the men she was close to in her mature years were much more attentive and emotionally open than those she knew in her youth. They understood the importance of maintaining an emotional connection, which strengthened their physical closeness. Every conversation, every shared dinner, every touch became an important part of their relationship. When a man over 60 understands that sexuality is not just a physical component, but much more, his ability to give and receive pleasure multiplies. He becomes more sensitive, more attentive to your desires. And this is what makes him a real animal in a good way, because he knows how to use his energy wisely. The emotional connection in mature relationships not only helps to strengthen intimacy, but also provides a strong foundation for the overall well-being of the couple. My grandmother explained that men who can maintain such relationships are not afraid to be vulnerable, not afraid to share their thoughts and feelings. There are many myths about sex in old age, my grandmother said, shaking her head. Many men believe that their sexual life must fade with age. But these are just stereotypes imposed by society. People are afraid to admit that they still want sex, afraid of appearing weak or inappropriate. She told me that such myths can be destructive to a man's self-esteem and sexual life. Especially when it comes to issues like erectile dysfunction or reduced libido, many men begin to feel inadequate. My grandmother emphasized that these problems are not the end of intimate life, but simply new challenges that can and should be addressed. Yes, erectile dysfunction can happen, but that doesn't mean the end of sexual life. There are many ways to overcome these issues. One of the most important things is communication with your partner. Open dialogue can not only solve many problems, but also make the relationship even closer. It all comes down to not being afraid to seek help and information. She told me a story about how her partner in later life faced a similar issue, but they were able to find a solution through trust and openness in their relationship. Instead of avoiding the topic, they discussed it and found ways to maintain intimacy despite physical changes. Often men are afraid to talk about their problems because they think it will make them less masculine. But a real man is one who is willing to accept his vulnerability and work to keep the relationship strong and close. You know, dear, the body changes with age, and that's normal, my grandmother continued. But that's no reason to give up on pleasure. You just have to learn to adapt. She explained that with age, men may face various physical changes, such as a decrease in testosterone levels, reduced blood vessel elasticity, and slower metabolism. All these factors can affect sexual activity, but they can be overcome with a mindful approach. It's important not to dwell on what you can't do anymore, but to find new ways to enjoy intimacy. Maybe sex won't be as fast-paced as it was in youth, but that doesn't mean it will be any less enjoyable. On the contrary, it's a chance for a man to truly get to know his partner and savor each moment. Grandmother emphasized that the most important thing is to be open to new discoveries. Every age brings its own surprises, she said. Instead of focusing on what you've lost, rejoice in what you've gained. She shared how, in her later years, she learned more about herself and her body than she ever had in her youth. Experience and wisdom helped her understand that true intimacy is not only physical pleasure but also emotional and spiritual connection. Men who accept their changes and are willing to experiment open up a world of new sensations. Sex becomes not just a physical act but something much greater, a way of expressing love, care, and respect for their partner. She also mentioned that many older men don't realize how important intimacy is not only for physical health but also for mental well-being. Intimate connection helps combat loneliness, which often comes with age. It's a way to feel needed, loved, and alive. Summing up our conversation, grandmother said, "It all comes down to confidence. A man who is confident in himself, his body, and his desires can achieve a lot. He's not afraid to embrace his vulnerabilities and turn them into strength. And it's precisely these men who are animals in bed because they know that it's not just about quantity but quality." Her words stayed with me for a long time. She showed me that age is not a barrier but a new chapter filled with opportunities. Men over 60, if they understand and accept their changes, can live full and rich lives, enjoying intimacy in ways they couldn't in their youth. Sexual life in old age is not the end, but the beginning of a new journey, she concluded. The main thing is not to be afraid to walk this path and discover new horizons. "You know, dear," my grandmother said, "I've always found it strange that people are afraid to talk about such things. But the more you keep quiet about your desires, the farther you move away from pleasure. Men who learn to speak openly about their feelings become happier. It's the path to a stronger emotional and physical connection with their partner." Her words were not just advice but a call to action. Sexual health in old age is something that should be discussed openly and without shame. When men stop being ashamed of their desires and realize that sexual energy doesn't disappear with age, they can reclaim the joy of intimacy. And here's what I want you to remember. My grandmother looked at me with a smile full of experience. A man at any age is capable of giving and receiving pleasure. All he needs is to accept his changes and not be afraid to open up to new things. Don't be afraid, talk about it, and then you can enjoy life to the fullest. I know because I've been through it myself. Her words were a revelation to me. I felt like I finally understood what it means to be a real woman, supporting a man in his quest not only to stay healthy but also to be confident in his sexuality, regardless of age. Now that you've learned the secrets my grandmother so generously shared, I invite you to embark on this journey with me. This is not the end, it's only the beginning of a path to a deep understanding of yourself and your body. No matter how old you are, there's always something new to discover. Subscribe to the channel if you like this content, and don't forget to click the bell so you don't miss the next videos. There's much more new and exciting ahead, and believe me, this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to live a full, sexual, and healthy life even in old age, stay with us. And, of course, share this video with those who might find it useful. After all, everyone deserves to live happily and with pleasure. Leave a comment, share your story, or ask questions. We're always happy to hear from you and help on this exciting journey. Life is full of secrets, and sometimes the most important ones come from those who've lived it the longest. My grandmother showed me that age is not the end, but a new chapter where you can find so many wonderful things. And sexual life at this age is just one of those amazing opportunities. So don't be afraid to learn new things, to be open to change, and to accept your body as it is. After all, the secret to longevity and happiness is being able to enjoy life at every stage. And men, as my grandmother said, can be animals in bed at any age if they know how to accept themselves and their partners. Let's embark on this journey together,